From promises with no intention of delivering to being investigated by the United States government, this is the wild yet quite funny story of the Phantom game console and the company founded by the incredible criminal and failure Timothy Roberts. We're going to stick to the timeline as closely as possible so that you understand just how crazy this story was. First off, we need to talk about the founder of Infinium Labs, the company behind the Phantom game console. Little Timmy was no stranger to business. In fact, before starting Infinium Labs, his track record consisted of held positions at 8 different companies, ranging from simple positions like consultant to higher positions such as founder, co-founder, or director, with the latter being more common. And it soon becomes clear why he held such positions at these companies. Not because he was some genius businessman or anything, but more so because all of these companies were to some degree related to him.
You are the father.
To save you from boredom, I'll quickly skim through each of them and get to the juicy bits. The first company, Savis, isn't really important as not much information regarding its business history exists. However, out of all companies he's been a part of, Tim Roberts considered this company a win, despite it trading at $1.23 around 2003 with risks of being delisted. Skyscape doesn't matter. And now we move on to Phoenix Networks, which, believe it or not, was run by none other than Roberts' brother, Peter Roberts. Timmy worked as an investor and director in Phoenix, which later collapsed in 2001 after laying off 50% of its staff and selling all its assets. And while editing this part, I found something else interesting. Believe this shit or not, this is so fucking weird. So before the internet, Peter and his twin brother Timmy were just basically in the basement of their houses, just running code, software, blah blah blah, all that shit. But they may have actually been like literal just criminals or freakers. If you don't know what a freaker is, it's basically just hacking into like telephones to obtain free calls. Back in the day, you know, that shit wasn't cheap. And just take a guess at what their company was called. Actually, I lied, don't guess. TWCBINC, which is short for the Wacko Cracko Brothers Incorporated. And apparently they were a part of a freaker group and ran a BBS called Wacko Land. Apparently they were well known in the 80s, but I guess whole time has passed. I'm just at a loss for words. Then we have Interior Corporation, which was I guess some sort of net sourcing and broadband network. I don't know. But what I do know is that Timmy claimed that the company went from a $0 valuation to a $280 million valuation under him and was later sold to Divine Interventures in March of 2001. However, in reality, the company was actually reporting losses for every year they were in business, and the keys weren't handed off to Divine under mutual agreement. They were basically forcibly taken as they filed for bankruptcy. By $280 million valuation, I think he actually meant $280 million in debt. Now we have BIG, which was supposed to be some kind of like mentor and consultant to other companies, though I guess they may have abandoned that idea as apparently they started using investor money to sponsor race cars in the Indy 500, host Hollywood parties, purchase interest in a plane, and make large pointless investments. In our world today, we'd call this fraud, but I guess back then things were different. Then we have MedHire LLC, which is honestly the stupidest one on the list. This company was apparently owned by a lady named Laura Roberts, Tim Roberts' mother. A reporter for Hard OCP called the company and was greeted by a lady who introduced herself as Laura Roberts. The reporter asked to speak to the director, Little Timmy, to which Laura replied that she was not Laura Roberts but instead Laura Roberts, and also that Timmy was not a director and didn't even live in the same state the company was located in. But it doesn't end there. The reporter soon called them again, and this time Laura, not to be confused with Laura, gave a different response. Timmy was in fact the co-director of MedHire, but she still couldn't get a hold of him as he frequently changed phone numbers. Definitely not suspicious whatsoever. I mean, I change my phone number every day. There was also a little bonus company, WorldCom, which was deleted from Timmy's website at some point. No clear reason was ever given, but it's safe to say that it was due to the fact that WorldCom filed for one of the largest bankruptcies in American history, with assets totaling $107 billion. Anyways, last company on the list is WanForce LLC, which was actually endorsed by an incredible and respectable businesswoman, Laura Roberts, not to be confused with Laura Roberts. The head of WanForce LLC was also another incredible businessman, Peter Roberts. I'm pretty sure this company also went bust, but there's no proof of that, and right now it's listed as a privately held company on LinkedIn. But now that we have a quick little lore rundown on Tim Roberts, let's get into his most notable company, Infinium Labs. Initially, Infinium began in 2002 as a privately held company, which went public in 2003 after announcing development on a revolutionary new gaming platform. Never heard those words before. We can see how he describes not only the console, but himself in this interview by Homeland here. The first question posed was how Infinium Labs came to be, which Robert responds with more buzzwords than he probably even knows the definitions of. I'm not reading all of this, except for this one line here. Infinium Labs was formed by veteran entrepreneurs who have a successful track record in building large-scale companies. I guess by successful he means going bankrupt, but I'm not sure. They then ask about hardware, to which Roberts just says, next question. No, he actually says he'll announce hardware at a later date, presumably because not even he has figured it out yet, despite already claiming that the console would be able to run and support more games than any other game console on the market. Kind of seems like a claim you should make after you figure out the hardware, no? Anyways, there was also a list of a bunch of other features which were all just mumbo jumbo, including cross-platform, which you'll later see as to why that technically was true. But at the end of the interview, he states that a prototype had been built and was ready to be unveiled in March of 2003, with plans to release in November of that same year, but with no mentions of a price just yet, and hardware despite having begun building already. What's quite funny is that around this time, nobody in the gaming space even knew about Little Timmy's past, and yet they still smelled something fishy, considering that everything he had said about the console was super vague with no real details to show for them. Obviously, March passed with no signs of Infinium anywhere, and it was in September of 2003 when reporter Steve, last name I won't say for certain reasons, I'm sorry fellow Steve, came out with an article digging into Robert's past, which is where I got a lore rundown, as all this information is from Timmy's website, which no longer exists and doesn't seem to have been archived. The second half of this article is quite interesting, as it began talking about the Infinium Labs offices. They publicly listed their base of operation to be held at this address. I'll censor most of it, but it really doesn't matter because in early 2003, Steve sent out a photographer to scout the area, only to find a small strip mall. There was a practically empty open office space within said mall, but it was unknown if it had belonged to Infinium or not. But okay, maybe they were still getting things set up. After all, they had come out there almost immediately after they went public. Give them some time, you know? Well, they gave them about 6 months before sending out another photographer who reported back that everything was virtually the same, no signs of Infinium. They did, however, find that Infinium had a PO box set up there, so I guess it somewhat existed? Maybe little Timmy was cooking something up in his quote-unquote $3 million home instead of an office like, well, he should be. But here's where it gets quite funny. Even though the article used nothing more than public information, it still seemed to hurt little Timmy's feelings. And in February of 2004, Infinium lawyers sent out a nice little cease and desist to Hard OCP's editor, demanding the article be taken down or else they'd file a defamation lawsuit. But Hard OCP's owner, Kyle Bennett, decided to play hardball, I get it, and instead filed a countersuit for declaratory judgment, as the only thing they were guilty of is truthful journalism. As this lawsuit was ongoing, Infinium Labs continued work on the Phantom console, and to everybody's surprise, they were actually able to create something, and oh no. Oh no. That right there is Kyle Bennett, Infinium's #1 enemy right now, and in his hands is one of the only Phantom prototypes known to have ever existed. I have no idea how he got it. He might have just stolen it, who knows? But either way, he has now brought it to QuakeCon 2004, which is why the video is such high quality. But alongside technically unveiling the Phantom console for the first time ever, Kyle had something else he also wanted to unveil. That's right, his buddy over here literally built Mjolnir from scratch, and Kyle was about to use it to smash the Phantom. The whole video is in the description if you want to check it out, but let's get back into the lawsuit. Infinium soon decided to file suit in Florida, as they deemed Texas unfit. The court then asked them to hand over a number of financial records, including Tim Roberts' tax returns, which they were unable to produce, of course. They quickly dropped all pending suits and tried to backpedal, but not before having to pay $50,000 to Hard OCP. Anyways, thankfully for Infinium, they had another prototype ready to be seen and would later show it off at E3 in May of 2004, well over a year from the initial planned date. I've shown this clip in previous videos, and as you may have been able to tell, this looks different to what Kyle had smashed, and that's because this here is considered the second generation version. But regardless, you can see the console did exist and was in fact running. At least that's what they wanted you to think. The representatives must have taken some kind of truth serum because they just outright admitted that the console was nothing more than an empty shell connected to a PC. So technically there was crossplay as you're playing on a console against PC players, so. And also, even though this showcase was fake, there was still constant freezing and crashing. They couldn't even fake it properly. Anyways, the Phantom did technically have an online release in August of 2003, but all that was just like a price tag of under $399 and the option to pay for a monthly subscription to a modern day equivalent of the Xbox Game Pass for $10 a month, or well, $15 in today's economy. But the Phantom soon after turned into a Phantom, as Infinium just constantly delayed it time and time again until summer of 2006, when they just said fuck this, we give up, and delisted Phantom from their website with no mentions of it ever again. But of course, the story doesn't end there, though I kinda wish it did, because now we get a little loosey-goosey. In 2005, the US Security and Exchange Commission came knocking on Robert's door, notifying him that there were charges pending against him for violating security laws, or in other words, for promoting a pump and dump. The world really does run in a circle. The claim states that Roberts had hired a stock promoter to go around and send faxes to investors that the Phantom console was right around the corner, hoping to boost the price of the stock way up so he could sell for a nice little payday, even though he had no intention whatsoever of actually releasing anything real to the public. He ended up having to pay a fine of $30,000 and was sent into the timeout corner for the next 5 years. Roberts was not ready to call it quits even after this, surprisingly. Instead, he would rebrand Infinium Labs to Phantom Entertainment, kind of reminiscent of another company I talked about. Check that video out if you haven't already. And to some kind of fucking miracle, Golden Gate investors agreed to let him borrow up to $5 million to finance manufacturing for the Phantom Lapboard, called Lapboard because it was supposed to lay on your laps. Stupid as hell. This was apparently supposed to be a keyboard and mouse add-on for the console, further emphasizing that the Phantom was nothing more than a low-end PC, but after that evaporated, it was just advertised as a normal wireless keyboard and mouse for a nice little price of $130, or $100 if you were crazy enough to pre-order it. In 2008, they also canceled their little Xbox Game Pass venture to focus development on the Flopboard. Now, I'm sure you all expected that this thing went through constant delays, but actually, you were right, it just kept getting delayed. What's interesting though is that even through their delays and their past, they were able to secure a deal with Pro Games Network to supply lapboards to hotels worldwide for some reason. But not only that, they also secured a deal with none other than Alienware to supply them for their media center PCs, though they seem to be the only ones that had the brains to pull out as soon as Phantom delayed the release date again. Regardless, they did release the Flopboard in June of 2008, over 2 years after their initial announcement, and coincidentally, also the same time I first landed in America. Maybe I was destined to talk about this, who knows. But I mean, just look at this thing either way. Who the fuck wants an angular keyboard? Other than CSGO and Fortnite players, I guess. But now we're going to travel a little bit into the future, all the way to 2015. At a small repair shop in Venice, Florida, some absolute gigachad just waltzed into the store one day with a Phantom console in hand. Apparently, Chad worked for someone who just happened to have a Phantom console for some reason. And since he didn't even know what it was, Chad paid him a measly $200 to take it off his hands. Here we can see the inside of the console, a jumbled mess of cables and wires that would rival Walmart's overpowered PCs. The repairman added in a hard drive and soldered on some real audio jacks, and lo and behold, Frankenstein's monster came to life. Chad took the now only working prototype of a Phantom console and went back into hiding, never to be seen again. Since we're going in timeline order, I'll just briefly mention two little things. In 2016, a second generation Phantom was apparently found, and what's pretty funny about this article is that it showed the inside of the console and there was a fucking Pepsi box just chilling inside. I think the guy added it in himself, but it made me lose it for some reason. I wouldn't put it past this company to put a cold brew box inside their console and call it liquid cooling. Apparently he also got it to boot, but there was no proof of that here, so. And in 2017, little Timmy was convicted of fraud for another one of his failed businesses from 2011, Savtira. It shouldn't surprise you it was due to defrauding investors by posting false revenue reports, and he later pleaded guilty to wire fraud. In 2018, he was ordered to pay $5,874,912.52 in restitution and was sentenced to 6 years and 8 months in federal prison. To this day, he is serving his sentence and is expected to be released in November of 2024, about 1 year from now. But that's not really important anymore. What is important is that in 2021, Chad resurfaced once more, and this time he was about ready to let go of his most prized possession. The console was listed on Heritage Auction auctions and was later sold on October 29, 2021 for a total of $7,800. More money than the company was worth by now. And that officially puts an end to the Phantom saga, with the last remnant hopefully sitting on a little shrine in a collector's living room. I hope you all enjoyed this damn roller coaster of a company, even though I feel like a small part of it was actually about the Phantom itself and more about Robert's tumultuous life. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, subscribe, comment down how much you wish you were a Phantom. As always, my socials are all in the description, feel free to check them out. I kind of want to start having an upload schedule like at least every Monday and Friday, so basically 2 times a week, maybe 3 if I go Super Saiyan or something. But I'll be honest with you, I can't promise it because I am terrible at sticking to schedules and I feel like I'm gonna run out of ideas at some point. The Phantom and Envision is kind of like a once in a lifetime story because from what I've seen, nothing really is as crazy as this. Maybe Soldier Boy, but then even then he's only like just a fucking dumbass. I'll try to see if I can keep 2 videos a week, maybe 3 if I'm God, but who knows, we'll see. Anyways, I've been a Phantom, you've been watching a channel that never existed, and ciao ciao.